The Syrian colonel pulled the telephone cord from the wall. Kamal Amin Thaabet watched through the window as 3 security vehicles surrounded his apartment building. He'd been transmitting for 4 hours straight. Too long. The Damascus skyline looked peaceful under the January moonlight. Everything was about to change. His wife called from the bedroom. He told her to stay inside. The Morse code transmitter still sat on his desk, warm from use. He'd sent 18 messages to Tel Aviv that night. Details about the Golan Heights fortifications, troop movements, Soviet weapon shipments. The intelligence would save hundreds of Israeli lives. He knew this with certainty. The footsteps came up the stairs fast, multiple men, boots on concrete. He had maybe 90 seconds. The transmitter needed to disappear. He grabbed it and moved toward the bathroom. The cipher books sat in plain view on his desk. Amateur mistake. Fatal. Someone knocked. Not the polite knock of a neighbor. The heavy, official knock of men with authority. He placed the transmitter in the toilet tank. The cipher books went into his jacket. He straightened his tie and walked to the door. His hand touched the knob. The door exploded inward. 5 men rushed inside. Syrian military intelligence. They wore civilian clothes but carried FNFAL rifles. The lead officer pointed at the desk. A junior agent walked straight to the window and looked at the transmission antenna extending from the sill. They'd been watching. They knew everything. The officer spoke in formal Arabic. Kamal Amin Thaabet, you are under arrest for espionage against the Syrian Arab Republic. He responded in the same formal dialect he'd perfected over 4 years in Damascus. There must be some mistake. I am a businessman. I import goods from Argentina. The officer smiled, not a pleasant smile. You are Eli Cohen, born December 1924 in Alexandria, Egypt. Israeli citizen, Mossad agent. You have been under surveillance for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. He calculated backward. The pattern became clear. They'd let him operate. They'd watched him cultivate sources. They'd documented everything. They had enough evidence to execute him 10 times over. The search took 30 minutes. They found the transmitter. They found the cipher books. They found the microdots hidden in his cigarette case. They found the one-time pads sewn into his jacket lining. They found photographs of military installations, lists of Syrian officers willing to cooperate with Israel, detailed maps of defensive positions on the Golan Heights. The evidence filled 3 cardboard boxes. Each item represented hours of careful work, years of building trust, dozens of high-level contacts, all of it gone in one failed transmission. They handcuffed him and led him down the stairs. His neighbors watched from their doorways. These were people he'd befriended, families he'd invited to his apartment for dinner parties, business partners, Syrian army officers, government officials. They stared at him with confusion, turning to hatred. The transformation happened fast. The military vehicle had no windows. He sat between 2 guards who kept their rifles pointed at his chest. The engine started. Damascus at night passed by in fragments through the small ventilation slits. He'd walked these streets freely for 4 years. He'd become Kamal Amin Thaabet so completely that sometimes he forgot Eli Cohen existed. The vehicle stopped at Syrian military intelligence headquarters on Palestine Street. They pulled him out and marched him through a basement entrance. The building smelled of cigarettes and old concrete. Fluorescent lights flickered in the corridors. They took him to a small room with a metal table and 3 chairs. The interrogation started immediately. No preliminaries. A new officer entered. Older, more experienced. Colonel Ahmed Swidani. He'd built a reputation for breaking foreign agents. His record was perfect. Everyone talked eventually. Swidani placed a folder on the table. We know who you are. We know who you work for. We know what you've transmitted. The only question is, how many others work with you? Eli said nothing. Standard protocol. Deny everything. Reveal nothing. Protect the network. Buy time for Tel Aviv to evacuate compromised assets. Swidani opened the folder. Photographs. Eli recognized them immediately. Pictures of him meeting with Syrian officers. pictures of him at military bases, pictures of him examining fortifications. The surveillance had been comprehensive, professional. He'd missed every sign. "We have 43 documented meetings with military personnel," Suedni said. "We have recordings of 16 conversations. We have your transmission schedule. We decrypted 3 of your messages. You will give us the cipher key for the rest." Eli understood the situation. They had operational details, but not the full network. They knew what he'd sent, but not who else was involved. His silence protected others. Israeli intelligence had taught him this principle. The mission succeeds only if the network survives. The first interrogation lasted 6 hours. Suedani asked 300 questions. Eli answered none of them. They brought him water. He refused it. They offered him cigarettes. He declined. Every interaction was an opportunity for psychological manipulation. He'd been trained to resist. They moved him to a cell at dawn, 6 feet by 8 feet. Concrete floor, no windows, a metal bucket in the corner. The door closed with a heavy clang. He sat on the floor and assessed his situation. The tradecraft failure was clear now. He'd violated the cardinal rule of radio transmission. Never transmit for more than 30 minutes. Never transmit from the same location twice in 1 week. Never break protocol under operational pressure. He'd done all 3. The urgency of the intelligence had overridden his training. The mistake was unforgivable. The cell was cold. January in Damascus. He had no blanket, no coat. They'd taken everything except his shirt and trousers. Standard procedure: remove comfort, increase stress, lower resistance. The techniques were predictable. He thought about his wife, Nadia, in Israel. She knew the risks. Every Mossad wife knew the risks. But knowing abstractly and facing reality were different things. She had 3 children. He'd seen them last 8 months ago during his cover trip to Buenos Aires. The meeting was brief. Operational security demanded it. He'd held his youngest daughter for 20 minutes. Then he'd left to return to Damascus. The door opened. Different guards. They took him back to the interrogation room. Suedani sat in the same chair. The session continued. More questions. More silence. The pattern repeated for 3 days. On the 4th day, they changed tactics. They brought in his wife from Damascus. Not Nadia from Israel, his Syrian wife, the cover wife, the woman he'd married as Kamal Amin Thaabet to solidify his legend. She was screaming. They'd told her everything. The deception, the lies, the fake marriage, the betrayal. She spat at him. Her family was prominent in Damascus, connected, influential. Now they were associated with an Israeli spy. The shame would destroy them. She called him things in Arabic that had no translation. The guards pulled her away. The emotional impact was significant. Eli had lived the cover so completely that her pain registered as real. Suedani watched his reaction carefully. You see the damage you cause, not just to military security, to real people, to families. Confess, and we can minimize the consequences for others. The manipulation was transparent, but effective. Eli felt the weight of what he'd done. Not the espionage, that was justified, necessary, but the collateral damage. The innocent people destroyed by his cover story. That guilt was genuine. The interrogations intensified. They brought Syrian officers he'd befriended. Some were angry, some were hurt, some were terrified they'd be implicated. Each confrontation added psychological pressure. Suedani orchestrated it perfectly. Break down the emotional barriers. Make him want to confess to end the suffering of others. 2 weeks passed. Eli maintained silence. The torture started on day 16. Nothing sophisticated. Beatings, sleep deprivation, stress positions. The Syrians were not subtle. They didn't need to be. Time was on their side. He calculated the timeline. Tel Aviv would have noticed his silence immediately. Standard protocol required daily check-ins. After 48 hours of silence, they'd assume capture. They'd evacuate every asset he'd contacted. They'd burn the entire Damascus network. The damage control would be extensive, but the network would survive. His body deteriorated. They fed him once a day, bread and water, minimal calories, maximum weakness. The beatings left bruises that wouldn't heal properly. 2 ribs cracked. His left eye swelled shut, but his mind remained clear. Training had prepared him for this. Survive the immediate pain, protect the mission, wait for diplomatic intervention. The intervention never came. Israel couldn't acknowledge him publicly. Admitting he was Mossad would validate Syrian claims. It would expose intelligence methods. It would compromise future operations. He understood this, but understanding didn't make it easier. Month 2 brought a new development. They'd broken some of his codes, not all of them, but enough to reconstruct partial messages. They knew about specific operations. They knew about Syrian officers who'd provided information. They started making arrests. Swidani showed him the arrest reports. 12 Syrian officers, 3 government officials, 2 businessmen, all people Eli had cultivated, all facing execution. Swidani placed the documents in front of him, one by one. These men die because you won't talk. Their families suffer. Their children become orphans. You can stop this. The manipulation was more sophisticated now. Eli knew some of those men were genuinely innocent. He'd used them for cover. They'd never actually provided intelligence. But the Syrians couldn't know that. They'd execute everyone connected to him. The body count would be enormous. He broke on day 63. Not completely, but enough. He confirmed his identity. Eli Cohen, Israeli citizen, Mossad agent. He provided operational details that were already compromised. He protected information that could still save lives. The calculation was precise. Give them enough to stop the executions of innocent people. Give them nothing that would compromise ongoing Israeli operations. The confession became public immediately. Damascus radio broadcast excerpts. Syrian newspapers printed his photograph. The government announced they'd captured Israel's most dangerous spy. The propaganda value was immense. They paraded him as proof of Israeli aggression, proof of the Zionist threat, proof that Syria needed stronger security measures. The trial was scheduled for March. Military tribunal. The verdict was predetermined. The Syrian government wanted a public execution, a message to Israel, a warning to any other foreign agents operating in Damascus. The trial would be theater. The outcome was certain. Eli used his time in the cell to prepare himself mentally. He'd known the risks from the beginning. Every Mossad agent knew the risks. Capture meant death. There would be no prisoner exchange, no diplomatic rescue, no last-minute extraction. He would die in Damascus. The only question was how he would face it. His thoughts returned to the beginning constantly. How had this happened? How had Eli Cohen from Alexandria become Kamal Amin Thaabet in Damascus? How had a clerk from the Israeli intelligence service become the most successful spy in Mossad history? The transformation started in 1960. Eli Cohen was 35 years old. He'd worked for Israeli intelligence for 8 years. Low-level assignments, translation work, administrative tasks, nothing operational, nothing important. His career had stalled. The Egyptian accent marked him as different. The Mizrahi background limited his opportunities. Ashkenazi officers dominated the upper ranks. They didn't trust Arabs, even Jewish Arabs. The summons came in December. Report to Mossad headquarters in Tel Aviv. The director wanted to see him personally. This never happened for clerks. Something had changed. The director was brief. We need someone for Damascus. Deep cover, long-term insertion, high risk. You fit the profile. Eli asked why him. The director explained. Syrian society was complex. Lebanese and Syrian expatriates living in Argentina formed a network. They returned home frequently. They had connections. They were trusted. The perfect cover. Eli would become one of them. He'd learn Spanish. He'd adopt an Argentine identity. He'd build a legend in Buenos Aires. Then he'd move to Damascus as a successful businessman seeking opportunities in his ancestral homeland. The training took 6 months. Spanish language instruction 8 hours daily. Argentine culture, business practices, cover backstory memorization, trade terminology, wine expertise, everything an Argentine importer would know. The instructors were merciless. Any mistake in the legend would mean death. The backstory was elaborate. Kamal Amin Thaabet, Born in Beirut, 1930, parents emigrated to Argentina when he was young, grew up in Buenos Aires, successful textile import business, never married, devout Muslim, Syrian patriot separated from homeland by circumstances of birth, financially comfortable, politically connected, the kind of person Damascus would welcome. They gave him $60,000, real money, operational funds. He flew to Buenos Aires in January 1961. The city was hot, humid, nothing like Tel Aviv. He rented an apartment in a Syrian neighborhood. He joined the Syrian Social Club. He attended mosque regularly. He made friends with Syrian and Lebanese expatriates. He threw expensive parties. He displayed wealth carefully. Not ostentatious, just successful enough to be interesting. The network building took 8 months. He met Michel Aflaq, co-founder of the Ba'ath Party, living in exile, influential, connected to Damascus power structures. Eli cultivated him carefully. Business discussions, political conversations, shared Syrian identity. Aflaq trusted him, introduced him to others. The network expanded. Major Amin al-Hafez was the key contact, Syrian military attaché in Argentina, ambitious, corrupt, accessible. Eli befriended him through mutual contacts. They met for dinner weekly. Eli picked up the checks, expensive restaurants, good wine. Al-Hafez appreciated generosity. He talked freely about Damascus politics, military tensions, government instability, Israeli border threats. Eli listened. He remembered everything. He reported to Tel Aviv through dead drops. The intelligence was valuable. Al-Hafez was rising in Syrian military ranks. He had access. He had ambitions. He could be useful later. Eli played the long game, build trust now, exploit it later. November 1961 brought opportunity. Al-Hafez received orders, returned to Damascus, take a position in military intelligence. He told Eli over drinks, "I'm going home. Syria needs men like us, patriots who understand the modern world." Eli expressed envy. "I've always wanted to return, but I have business here. Commitments?" Al-Hafez leaned forward. "Bring your business to Damascus. Syria needs investors, development, modern trade connections. I'll introduce you to the right people. We'll make it work." The opening was perfect. Eli appeared to consider it. He expressed concerns. Moving a business was complicated. Starting over was risky, but the call of the homeland was strong. Al-Hafez pushed harder. He made promises, connections, opportunities, protection. Eli agreed. He'd make the move. 6 months to arrange his affairs. Close business in Buenos Aires properly. Then Damascus. Al-Hafez was delighted. They drank to Syrian brotherhood, to business success, to the future. Tel Aviv approved the plan immediately. The access would be unprecedented. A Mossad agent operating openly in Damascus, befriended by military intelligence, protected by connections. The operation was bold, dangerous, essential. The preparation intensified. He needed to appear legitimate. Real business transactions, real money movement, real evidence of success in Argentina. Mossad provided documentation, import records, bank statements, business licenses, everything authentic, everything verifiable. The legend had to survive scrutiny. He liquidated his Argentine assets in May 1962. The timing was deliberate. Syrian government was stable. Ba'ath Party was gaining influence. Al-Hafez was rising. The window was open. He booked passage on a ship, Buenos Aires to Beirut, then overland to Damascus. The journey would take 5 weeks. He'd arrive as a successful businessman, an Argentine-Syrian, a patriot returning home. The ship departed June 1st. He spent the voyage refining his legend, practicing his responses, memorizing details. Every conversation with other passengers was rehearsal. Every question was a test. By the time they reached Beirut, he was Kamal Amin Thaabet completely. Eli Cohen existed only in private thoughts. Damascus. In July 1962 was hot, dusty, crowded. The city had 300,000 people. Old sections with narrow streets, new sections with modern buildings. The political atmosphere was tense. The union with Egypt had just collapsed. The Ba'ath Party was maneuvering for power. The military was divided. The government was weak. Al-Hafez met him at the border. The welcome was warm, genuine. They drove to Damascus together. Al-Hafez talked constantly about opportunities, about the political situation, about his own rising position. He'd become a colonel. He had influence. He could open doors. The apartment was in Abu Rumane, nice neighborhood, close to government buildings. Al-Hafez had arranged it, furnished, ready. The rent was reasonable. Eli moved in immediately. The first week was orientation, learning the city, understanding the rhythm, identifying surveillance threats, planning escape routes, standard tradecraft. He registered his business with Syrian authorities. Import-export, textiles, luxury goods. The paperwork was extensive. Bureaucracy was Byzantine. But Al-Hafez smoothed the process, introduced him to the right officials, made the right calls. Within 2 weeks, he was established. Legal, official, a legitimate businessman. The social cultivation started immediately. Al-Hafez introduced him to Syrian officers, government officials, business leaders, Eli through parties. His apartment became a gathering place. He served expensive whiskey, good food. He cultivated an image, wealthy, generous, connected, discreet. The kind of man people trusted with sensitive information. The first intelligence breakthrough came in September. A party at his apartment, a dozen Syrian officers attending. The conversation turned to Israeli threats, border tensions, defense preparations. Eli listened, asked intelligent questions, expressed concern as a patriot. The officers talked freely. They'd been drinking. They felt safe. The information was detailed. Troop deployments, defensive positions, command structures. He transmitted that night his first message from Damascus. The radio was hidden in a specially modified suitcase. The cipher was unbreakable, one-time pad, used once and destroyed. The transmission lasted 12 minutes. Tel Aviv acknowledged receipt. The operation was live. The pattern established itself quickly. Parties twice a week, casual conversations, careful questions, mental notes, transmission every third night. The intelligence flowed steadily. Syrian military capabilities, political divisions, Soviet weapons deliveries, defense plans, everything Israeli military planners needed. October brought a coup attempt. The government fell. The Ba'ath Party seized power. Al-Hafez was promoted. General now, head of military intelligence. The friendship paid dividends. He trusted Eli completely. He brought him into inner circles. Eli met the new president, the defense minister, the chief of staff. His access was extraordinary. The Golan Heights became his focus. The plateau overlooked northern Israel. Syrian artillery positions could strike Israeli settlements. The defenses were formidable. Bunkers, gun emplacements, communication trenches. Israel needed detailed intelligence. Eli provided it. Al-Hafez invited him to tour military installations. "You're interested in defense matters. You should see what we're building. The fortifications will make Syria impregnable." The tour took 3 days. Eli saw everything: the bunker systems, the artillery positions, the supply routes, the communication networks. He memorized it all: distances, coordinates, unit designations. The information was priceless. He couldn't transmit immediately. The tour was monitored. Security was tight. He waited 4 days. Then he sent it all. The transmission took 40 minutes. Too long. But the intelligence was too important to split up. Tel Aviv received everything: the Golan fortifications, the defensive plans, the weak points. His legend strengthened. He became Kamal Amin Thaabet so completely that his real identity faded. He thought in Arabic. He dreamed in Arabic. He prayed at mosque regularly. He observed Islamic customs. He was Syrian. The cover was perfect. December 1962 brought personal complications. Syrian friends suggested marriage. A successful man needed a wife. They had candidates, good families, good connections. Eli couldn't refuse without raising suspicion. He agreed to meet someone. Her name was Nadia, not his real wife in Israel. A different Nadia, Syrian. 23 years old, educated, from a prominent Damascus family. The courtship was brief, 6 weeks. The marriage was necessary for the cover. He went through with it. The ceremony was traditional. The celebration was elaborate. His friends were delighted. The marriage added authenticity. He was now fully integrated, a married man, part of Syrian society, beyond suspicion. The personal cost was significant, but the operational value was enormous. 1963 was his most productive year. Al-Hafez became prime minister. Eli's access reached the highest levels. He attended government meetings, military briefings, policy discussions. He saw classified documents. He heard military secrets. He transmitted it all. The Israeli military used his intelligence immediately. Airstrikes targeted positions he'd identified. Artillery hit coordinates he'd provided. Commando raids exploited weaknesses he'd reported. The operational impact was measurable. Israeli casualties decreased. Syrian forces were surprised repeatedly. The advantage was decisive. Syrian counterintelligence noticed the pattern. Too many security breaches. Too many successful Israeli operations. They started investigating, looking for leaks, questioning procedures, tightening security. The pressure increased. Eli adapted. He varied his transmission schedule. He used different locations. He employed more sophisticated tradecraft. The risk increased, but so did the precautions. He'd been operating for 2 years. The mission was succeeding beyond expectations. The intelligence value was unprecedented. March 1964 brought new complications. Soviet advisors arrived, military intelligence experts. They reviewed Syrian security. They found weaknesses. They recommended changes. The counterintelligence procedures became more sophisticated. The surveillance increased. The danger multiplied. Eli noticed the changes. He reported them to Tel Aviv. He requested extraction consideration. The response was negative. The intelligence was too valuable. The access was too good. The mission would continue. He accepted the decision. He knew the risks. He continued operating. The pressure manifested in small ways: longer gaps between transmissions, more careful source cultivation, increased surveillance awareness. He was still effective, but the margin of error was shrinking. One mistake would be fatal. Al-Hafez's position changed again. Political maneuvering, the Ba'ath Party split. Different factions, power struggles. Al-Hafez was pushed aside, not purged, not arrested, just reduced. His influence diminished. Eli's primary protection weakened. New officers took control, men who didn't know Eli personally, men who were more suspicious, more careful, more professional. The friendly atmosphere changed. Questions became more pointed. Background checks became more thorough. The scrutiny intensified. Eli maintained his cover. His business provided legitimate reason for his presence. His marriage provided social standing. His friendships provided access. But the foundation was shifting. The protection was eroding. The timeline was shortening. Tel Aviv demanded more intelligence. The Six-Day War was approaching. They didn't know it yet, but tensions were rising. Israeli military needed every advantage. They pushed Eli harder. More requests, more detail, more frequency. He complied. The mission demanded it. He increased his transmission schedule. He took more risks. He pushed his sources harder. The intelligence was extraordinary, but the exposure increased proportionally. September 1964 brought a close call. Syrian counterintelligence arrested a Lebanese businessman, suspected espionage. The man had attended Eli's parties. They questioned him. They investigated his connections. They looked at everyone he'd associated with, including Eli. The investigation was routine, surface level. They found nothing. Eli's legend held, but the warning was clear. They were looking. They were suspicious. They were getting closer. He reported the incident to Tel Aviv. He recommended operational pause, 60 days to let suspicion fade. The response was mixed. Approval for reduced activity, but not complete cessation. The intelligence was too important. The window was too valuable. October brought another development. The Soviets installed new detection equipment, radio direction finding technology, sophisticated, accurate, designed to locate clandestine transmitters. The game changed. Every transmission became exponentially more dangerous. Eli adapted again. He reduced transmission time. He varied locations more frequently. He used lower power settings. The precautions were necessary, but they also reduced the intelligence volume. Tel Aviv complained. He explained the situation. They understood, but still pushed for more. His life became compartmentalized. Kamal Amin Thaabet during the day, social, friendly, successful. Eli Cohen at night, careful, calculating, paranoid. The psychological toll was significant, but he managed it. Training had prepared him. December 1964 was his last good month. The intelligence continued. His sources remained productive. The transmission schedule held. Everything appeared normal, but the pressure was building. Syrian counterintelligence was improving. Soviet assistance was making them more capable. The net was tightening. He felt it, but couldn't identify specifics. Just a sense, small signs, conversations that ended when he approached, questions that probed too carefully, looks that lasted too long, professional paranoia, or legitimate warning. He couldn't tell. Tel Aviv pressed for one more major intelligence push. The Golan Heights defenses had been upgraded, new fortifications, new positions, new capabilities. Israel needed current information. Eli agreed to get it. One more tour, one more transmission, then he'd request extraction. The mission had to end soon. The risk was too high. But one more mission first. January 1965 started with a wedding. A Syrian colonel Eli had cultivated. The ceremony was elaborate. The guest list included Syria's military elite. Defense Minister Hafez al-Assad attended, the man who would later rule Syria for 3 decades. Eli worked the room. Conversations flowed. Intelligence accumulated. Al-Assad was younger than expected. 34 years old, Air Force commander, ambitious, ruthless. He talked about Israeli air defenses. His pilots needed better intelligence, better targeting. Eli listened, asked informed questions. Al-Assad appreciated the interest. They talked for 40 minutes. The information was gold. He transmitted that night. Al-Assad's concerns about Israeli air defenses, Syrian Air Force capabilities, planned bombing routes, target priorities. The intelligence went straight to Israeli Air Force Command. They'd use it to position their defenses. Syrian pilots would die because of this conversation. Eli understood this. The mathematics of war were brutal. The pattern continued through January. 3 parties that month, dozens of conversations, hundreds of data points. He transmitted 6 times. The volume was dangerous, but the quality justified the risk. Tel Aviv was ecstatic. The intelligence value was exceeding projections. February brought an invitation. General Amin al-Hafez wanted to show him something special. The newest fortifications on the Golan Heights, Syria's answer to Israeli aggression. Impregnable positions. Eli's pulse quickened. This was the intelligence Tel Aviv had requested. The access was perfect. They drove north on February 8th. Al-Hafez brought 2 other officers. The conversation was casual, old friends talking about military matters. Eli played his role perfectly. Interested patriot, concerned citizen, successful businessman who understood strategic importance. The fortifications were impressive. Concrete bunkers set into the hillside, overlapping fields of fire, artillery positions protected by earth berms, machine gun emplacements covering every approach. The Syrians had learned from World War II. The defenses were formidable. Al-Hafez explained each position, the unit assignments, the ammunition stocks, the communication systems, the relief schedules. He was proud. This was his work. Syria was finally building proper defenses. Israel would break against these positions. Eli memorized everything, the bunker locations, the gun calibers, the spacing between positions, the dead zones, the weak points. Every detail mattered. This intelligence would save Israeli lives when the war came. And war was coming. Everyone knew it. The question was when. They climbed to the highest observation post. The view was spectacular. The entire Galilee spread below, Israeli settlements visible as small clusters, roads cutting through farmland. The military value was obvious. Artillery up here could dominate the valley. Air observers could direct strikes against any target. Al-Hafez pointed out specific Israeli positions. "We can hit everything from here: water pumping stations, transportation routes, population centers. When the war comes, we'll control the battlefield." Eli nodded. "Israel has grown bold. They need to be reminded of Arab strength." The conversation continued. Tactical details, operational plans. Al-Hafez held nothing back. Eli was trusted completely. The years of cultivation paid off in this moment. One conversation. Enough intelligence for a dozen operations. They returned to Damascus that evening. Eli went straight home. He had to transmit immediately. The intelligence was time-sensitive. Israeli military needed it now, but transmission from his apartment was risky. The Soviet detection equipment was getting better. He'd been pushing his luck. He decided to wait. One night, let the day's activities settle. Transmit tomorrow after dark. Standard tradecraft. Don't rush. Don't make mistakes. The intelligence was valuable, but not worth compromising the entire operation. February 9th passed normally. Business meetings, social calls, maintaining the cover. That evening he prepared to transmit. The radio came out of its hiding place. The cipher pad was fresh. The message was encoded, ready. He started transmission at 9 p.m. The Golan fortifications intelligence. Everything Al-Hafez had shown him. The message was long, complex, detailed. He worked through it methodically. 20 minutes passed. 30. The message was 3/4 complete. The knock came at 35 minutes. Not normal visitor knock. Official knock. Military knock. His stomach dropped. He kept transmitting. Had to finish the message. Tel Aviv needed this intelligence. Another 2 minutes would complete it. The door burst open. The soldiers rushed in. He had maybe 5 seconds. His hand moved to destroy the cipher pad. Too late. They grabbed him. The radio was still on. The message incomplete. The evidence overwhelming. Colonel Swidani entered last. He looked at the radio, the cipher pad, the antenna. His expression never changed. "Eli Cohen, you are under arrest for espionage against Syria." The interrogation had started that night. But now, sitting in his cell 3 weeks later, Eli understood the full scope of his failure. Not just the capture, the timing. He'd been made weeks earlier. The Soviets had detected his transmissions. They'd triangulated his location. They'd brought proof to Syrian counterintelligence. The tour of the Golan fortifications was a setup. They'd let him see everything. Let him gather the intelligence. Let him prepare to transmit. Then they'd caught him in the act. The evidence was irrefutable. They had recordings, triangulation data, physical evidence, testimony from multiple sources. The trial would be a formality. The verdict predetermined, death by hanging. The question was timing. The Syrians wanted maximum propaganda value. They'd stage a show trial, invite international press, demonstrate Israeli aggression, prove the Zionist threat, make an example. Eli would be the centerpiece, the Israeli super spy, caught and executed, a warning to others. Tel Aviv worked desperately behind the scenes. Diplomatic channels, back-channel communications, offers to trade prisoners. Nothing worked. Syria wanted blood. They wanted a public execution. They wanted to humiliate Israel. The international pressure increased. World leaders called for clemency. Religious figures appealed for mercy. The Pope sent a letter. Nothing changed Syrian resolve. Eli Cohen would die. The decision was final. His trial began March 28th. Military tribunal. 3 judges, all colonels, all predetermined to convict. The courtroom was packed. Press from 20 countries. Syrian officials, military officers. The atmosphere was circus and execution combined. The evidence took 4 days to present. Transcripts of transmissions, photographs of equipment, testimony from Syrian officers he'd cultivated. The prosecution was thorough, overwhelming, undeniable. Eli's lawyer made pro forma objections. Everyone knew the outcome. They let him testify. Final statement. He spoke for 2 hours. Not a confession, a justification. He explained his motivations: love of Israel, fear for its survival, duty to protect his people. The court listened in stony silence. The words changed nothing. The verdict came May 8th. Guilty on all charges. Espionage, treason, multiple counts, each one carrying death penalty. The sentence was unanimous. Death by hanging, to be carried out in public. Marjah Square, Damascus. Date to be announced. The international outcry intensified. France interceded officially. Israel made unprecedented concessions. Offers to release Syrian prisoners. Offers of territorial adjustments. Offers of cash payments. Syria refused everything. The execution would proceed. Eli wrote letters in his cell to his wife in Israel, his real wife, Nadia. 3 children he'd barely known. The letters were careful. No classified information, no operational details, just personal thoughts, apologies, expressions of love, attempts at closure. Syrian censors read everything. Most was never sent. He met with a rabbi. The Syrians allowed it. Rabbi Nissim Andebo came from Cairo. They gave him 30 minutes. The conversation was monitored. They spoke of faith, of duty, of sacrifice. The rabbi tried to comfort him. Eli was beyond comfort. He'd made his peace. The date was set. May 18th, 3 weeks away. The preparations were extensive. Building the gallows in Marjah Square, testing the rope, planning security, organizing the press coverage. Syria wanted everything perfect. This execution would be remembered. Eli's cell became a countdown. Each day brought him closer. He used the time to prepare mentally. He'd faced death before, in training, in operations, in close calls. But facing it with certainty was different. The psychological adjustment was profound. He thought about his life, the choices he'd made, the path he'd taken. Born in Egypt, emigrated to Israel, joined intelligence services, became a spy, lived a double life, died in Damascus. The arc was complete, no regrets. He'd chosen this. He'd known the risks. The nights were harder. Alone in the cell, darkness absolute. Sounds of other prisoners, some crying, some praying, some silent. He understood them all. They were waiting to die, united by fate, divided by crimes, but equal in the end. May 10th brought a diplomatic breakthrough. France convinced Syria to allow a final visit. Eli's wife could come, the real Nadia, from Israel. They'd give them 1 hour, supervised, monitored, recorded. But 1 hour, Syria agreed. The humanitarian gesture would play well internationally. Nadia arrived May 14th. She'd flown to Geneva, then Damascus, under French protection. The Syrian government guaranteed her safety. Temporary, conditional, but real. She looked exhausted. 3 children at home, husband about to die. The weight was visible. They met in a conference room. 2 guards present. A stenographer recording. The conversation was stilted. What do you say? How do you say goodbye? They had 3 children, 15 years of marriage, a lifetime of memories, 1 hour to process it all. Eli spoke first. The children. Tell them their father loved them. Tell them he did what was necessary. Tell them he served his country. Tell them to be proud. Nadia nodded. She couldn't speak. The tears were immediate, complete. She'd known this might happen. Every intelligence wife knows, but knowing in theory and facing reality were completely different. He continued, The life insurance will help. Mossad takes care of its own. You'll be supported. The children will be educated. Israel remembers. The practical matters, money, future, survival. They couldn't discuss emotions. Too painful, too final. Logistics were safer, manageable, concrete. They talked about the children. Sophie was 6, Eret was 4, Shaul was 2. They wouldn't remember him. Too young, but Nadia would tell them. Create memories from photographs, from stories, from national hero status. Eli Cohen would live forever, just not physically. The hour passed impossibly fast. The guard stood. Time was up. Nadia grabbed his hand. I love you. The children love you. Israel loves you. You won't die for nothing. He nodded. I know. Tell them I said goodbye. Tell them I was brave. Tell them the truth. She left. He watched her walk away. The door closed. He was alone again. The visit made everything worse. More real, more final, more impossible to accept. But also necessary. Closure required it. The final 4 days passed in a blur. Eli stopped eating. The food was irrelevant. His body was shutting down, preparing. The biological response to certain death. The guards noticed, but didn't care. Dead men don't need food. May 17th brought rain. Damascus in spring. The weather was unpredictable. The execution was scheduled for dawn. May 18th, 6 a.m. The rain complicated logistics, but Syria wouldn't postpone. The date was set. The world was watching. The show would go on. He slept surprisingly well that final night. Exhaustion helped. Acceptance helped more. He'd processed everything, made his peace, said his goodbyes. Nothing remained except the act itself. He was ready. The guards came at 4 a.m., no ceremony, just efficiency. They took him from the cell, cleaned him, gave him fresh clothes, traditional Islamic dress, white robes. The symbolism was intentional, purity before death. The Syrians were meticulous about religious protocol. The rabbi came again. Final prayers, final words. They had 10 minutes. The conversation was brief, mostly silence. Some things don't need words. The rabbi blessed him. Eli thanked him. The moment passed. The transport was a military truck. Canvas covered, no windows, 6 guards inside. They drove through empty Damascus streets. 4:30 a.m. The city was asleep. No one saw them pass. The route was direct, 20 minutes to Marja Square. The square was already full. Thousands of people. The government had encouraged attendance. Patriotic duty. Witness Israeli aggression punished. Witness Syrian justice. The crowd was orderly. Military police everywhere. This was official, controlled, choreographed. The gallows stood in the center, constructed precisely, tested thoroughly. The rope was new. The knot was professional. Hangman's noose, 13 coils, traditional. The drop was calculated for his weight. Quick death, clean. The Syrians weren't sadists, just executioners. He climbed from the truck at 5:40 a.m. The crowd noise increased. Hostile, angry. He'd spied against them, threatened their country, betrayed their trust. The hatred was genuine, expected, justified from their perspective. The walk to the gallows was 50 meters. The guards flanked him. He walked steadily, no hesitation, no stumbling. The training held. Die with dignity, give them nothing, show strength. The crowd watched. Some jeered, some were silent, most just stared. The square had been Damascus's heart for centuries. Ottoman executions here, French colonial justice here, Syrian independence celebrated here, history layered on history. Now Eli Cohen would die here. Another layer, another story, another ending. He reached the gallows at 5:50 a.m. The executioner waited. Professional, experienced. This was his job, nothing personal, just business. He guided Eli up the 13 steps. Unlucky number. The symbolism wasn't lost. Eli counted each step. Something to focus on, something concrete. The platform was solid, well constructed. The rope hung exactly center. Everything prepared, everything ready. The executioner positioned him, hands bound, feet together, standard procedure, no drama, just process. The prosecutor read the charges one final time. Espionage, treason, crimes against Syria. The list was long, comprehensive, complete. The sentence was repeated. Death by hanging. The crowd listened in silence. This was the important part. Justice proclaimed. Justice delivered. They offered him final words. Traditional. Even condemned men get this courtesy. He declined initially. What was there to say? Then changed his mind. One statement. For Israel, for history, for himself. I am Eli Cohen. I served my country. I protected my people. I did my duty. I have no regrets. Shema Yisrael. The ancient prayer, Hear, O Israel, the declaration of faith. Every Jewish child learns it. Every Jewish adult remembers it. The final words of martyrs for 3,000 years. The crowd murmured. The prayer was recognized. Even Muslims knew its significance. The executioner placed the hood, Black cloth, traditional, merciful, hide the face, preserve dignity, make it easier for everyone. Eli appreciated this small kindness. The darkness was immediate, total. His other senses sharpened, sound, smell, touch, everything intensified. He heard the square, thousands of people breathing, shuffling, waiting. He heard traffic in the distance, Damascus, waking up, normal life continuing, his life ending. The juxtaposition was strange, profound, fitting. He felt the rope around his neck, not tight, not yet. The executioner positioned it carefully. Professional work. The knot behind the left ear. Standard placement, quick break, clean death. The Syrian hangmen were trained, competent. He was grateful for this. The platform trembled slightly. Thousands of people pressed close. The structure was solid, but not immune to physics. The movement was subtle, just enough to feel. A reminder of life, of connection, of the physical world he was leaving. Time dilated, seconds stretched. His mind raced. Memories cascaded. Childhood in Alexandria, immigration to Israel, intelligence training, Buenos Aires, Damascus, the parties, the transmissions, the fear, the excitement, the purpose. All of it compressed into final moments. He thought of his children, Sophie, Arid, Shaul. They'd grow up without him, know him only through stories, through photographs, through national mythology. He wished he could see them once more, hold them, tell them directly. But wishes changed nothing. He thought of Nadia, his real wife, the woman who'd supported his mission, accepted the risks, raised their children alone, waited for letters that came irregularly, lived with constant fear. She was the real hero. He was just the agent. She was the foundation. He thought of Israel, the country he'd served, the people he'd protected, the intelligence he'd provided, the lives he'd saved, the war he'd helped prepare for. The Six-Day War would come in 2 years. Israel would win decisively. His intelligence would make the difference. He wouldn't see it, but it would happen. His work would matter. The prosecutor finished reading. The legal requirements were satisfied. The execution could proceed. The executioner checked the rope one final time. Professional thoroughness. Everything correct. Everything ready. The moment had arrived. 6 a.m. exactly. The square fell silent. Thousands of people holding their breath. The executioner's hand moved to the lever. One pull, simple mechanics. The platform would drop. The rope would catch. The fall would break his neck. Death would be instant. The science was reliable. Eli heard the lever move. Mechanical click. Metal on metal. The sound was clear, distinct, final. The platform shifted. He felt it begin to drop. Time stopped completely. One eternal moment, suspended, neither alive nor dead, between worlds, between states, between everything. The rope caught. His neck snapped instantly. The sound was audible across the square. Thousands heard it. The finality was absolute. Eli Cohen was dead. The mission was over. The story was complete. The body hung for 3 hours. Syrian law required it. Public executions meant public display. The crowd slowly dispersed. Work called. Life continued. Death was common. This particular death was noteworthy but not unique. Damascus had seen executions before, would see them again. The international reaction was immediate. Israel declared 3 days of mourning. Prime Minister Levi Eshkol called him the greatest spy in Israeli history. The Knesset held a memorial session. The story went public. Everything, the mission, the intelligence, the capture, the execution. Eli Cohen became a legend instantly. The intelligence he'd provided changed history. The Golan Heights fortifications he'd mapped, the Syrian defensive positions he'd identified, the command structures he'd exposed. All of it became the foundation for Israeli military planning. When the Six-Day War came in June 1967, Israeli forces used his intelligence. They knew every bunker, every gun position, every weak point. The attack was surgical, precise, devastating. The Golan Heights fell in 2 days. Israeli forces overran positions that were supposed to be impregnable. Syrian commanders couldn't understand it. How did Israel know exactly where to strike? How did they know the defensive layouts? How did they know the communication networks? The answer was classified, buried in Mossad files, attributed to multiple sources. But insiders knew. Eli Cohen's intelligence made it possible. The casualties told the story. Israeli casualties in the Golan Heights campaign were minimal. Syrian casualties were catastrophic. Hundreds of soldiers died in positions that Israeli forces bypassed completely. Thousands surrendered when their supply lines were cut with precision. The military advantage was overwhelming. One spy's work. 4 years of intelligence, applied at the decisive moment. The strategic impact lasted decades. Israel held the Golan Heights. The settlements he'd seen under threat were now protected. The artillery positions that could bombard the Galilee were neutralized. The tactical advantage reversed. Syrian forces were pushed back. The border was secure. His mission succeeded completely. But the human cost was immense. 15 Syrian officers executed for collaboration. Most were innocent. They'd talked too freely at parties, shared information casually, trusted their friend Kamal. The betrayal destroyed families, careers, lives. The collateral damage was significant. His Syrian wife was shunned, her family disgraced. Association with an Israeli spy was unforgivable. She divorced him posthumously, reclaimed her maiden name, tried to rebuild. The society never forgot. She lived under suspicion, under shame, under constant reminder. The marriage had been fake for Eli. For her, it was real. The pain was genuine. Nadia in Israel became a widow at 36, 3 children to raise alone. The government provided financially, pension, benefits, support. But money doesn't replace a father, doesn't fill the emptiness, doesn't answer the children's questions. She raised them as Eli wanted, told them their father was a hero, told them he died protecting Israel, told them to be proud. The children grew up with their father's legend, national hero, brave spy, ultimate sacrifice. The narrative was powerful, but also burdensome. Living up to a legend is impossible. Being normal when your father is extraordinary is difficult. They managed. They succeeded. They honored his memory. The debate about Eli Cohen's mission started immediately after his death and never stopped. Was it worth it? Did the intelligence justify the risk? Should Mossad have extracted him earlier? Could he have been saved? The questions have no perfect answers. The intelligence professionals say yes, absolutely. His intelligence saved hundreds of lives, maybe thousands. The Golan Heights campaign would have been bloodier without his maps, longer without his layouts, more costly without his insights. The value was measurable, quantifiable, decisive. The humanitarians say maybe, but at terrible cost. One man's life, one family destroyed, multiple Syrian families destroyed, international incident, diplomatic damage, public execution. The price was high. Was it necessary? Could the same intelligence have come from satellite photography, from signals intelligence, from other sources? The counterfactuals are unknowable. The family says they don't know. They're proud. They're devastated. They understand the importance. They feel the absence. Both things are true simultaneously. Contradictory emotions coexist. The complexity is irreducible. The Syrians buried him quietly. Unmarked grave, unknown location. They didn't want a shrine, didn't want Israeli commemorations, didn't want his grave to become a symbol. The location was kept secret, deliberately, permanently. His body remains in Syria, somewhere, nowhere specific. Israel requested the remains repeatedly. Diplomatic channels, back channels, prisoner exchanges, peace negotiations. Every opportunity raised the issue. Return Eli Cohen's body. Let him be buried in Israel. The Syrians refused consistently. Every request, every negotiation, every decade. The answer was always no. The refusal became its own statement. Political, strategic, symbolic. Syria won the battle. caught the spy, executed him publicly, but lost the war, lost the territory, lost the strategic advantage. Keeping his body was small revenge, petty but meaningful. They held something Israel wanted, one small victory in a larger defeat. His story became legend in Israel. Books, movies, television series, documentaries. Everyone knew Eli Cohen, the greatest spy, the ultimate sacrifice, national hero. Schools taught his story. Military units studied his tradecraft. Intelligence officers studied his methods. The legend grew larger than the man. The mythology obscured some truths. The mission wasn't perfect. He made mistakes. The transmission that got him caught was sloppy, too long, too risky, professional error. The cultivation of al-Hafez was brilliant. The final security lapse was amateurish. Both things are true. Heroes are human. Legends simplify. The intelligence value was real, but not unique. Mossad had other sources in Syria. Satellite reconnaissance was improving. Signals intelligence was developing. The Golan Heights would have been mapped eventually. Eli accelerated the timeline, made it more detailed, more accurate, but wasn't absolutely irreplaceable. The honesty matters. His personal sacrifice was genuine. He left his family, lived a double life, endured tremendous stress, faced capture with dignity, died bravely. The courage was authentic. The dedication was real. This part of the legend is accurate. Some myths are true. The impact on intelligence operations was significant. Mossad learned lessons. Don't let agents operate too long. Extract before they're compromised. Better counter-surveillance. Better communication security. Shorter transmission times. The improvements came directly from his capture. His death educated a generation of intelligence officers. The Syrian perspective is different. They caught an Israeli spy, proved their counterintelligence capability, demonstrated their security. The public execution sent a message: don't spy against Syria, don't underestimate Syrian intelligence, don't assume superiority. Their narrative emphasizes Syrian competence. Israeli failure. The perspective is valid. History has multiple viewpoints. The geopolitical legacy endures. The Golan Heights remain Israeli territory, 58 years after the Six-Day War. The United States recognized Israeli sovereignty in 2019. The international community mostly hasn't. The status is contested, disputed, unresolved. The territory Eli Cohen mapped remains battlefield and bargaining chip simultaneously. His children live in Israel today. Sophie became a teacher, Erit an accountant, Shaul a businessman. Normal lives, successful lives. Their father's legacy doesn't define them. They honor it, but aren't imprisoned by it. They made their own choices, created their own stories. The healthy response to impossible expectations. Nadia lived to 91. She died in 2020. 55 years a widow. She never remarried, kept his name, kept his memory, raised their children, told his story, defended his reputation. Her loyalty was absolute. The marriage was real despite the separations. The love endured despite the death. The Israeli government designated Eli Cohen a national hero officially in 1967. His name appears on the memorial wall at Mossad headquarters. Intelligence officers walk past it daily, remember his sacrifice, study his methods, learn from his mistakes. The institutional memory is permanent. The debate continues about whether to pressure Syria for his remains. Some families want closure, want proper burial, want to visit a grave. Others say, leave it. He died for Syria's secrets. Syria keeps his body. There's symmetry there. Fitting conclusion. The discussion never resolves. The intelligence he provided is still classified partially. 60 years later, some methods remain sensitive. Some sources need protection. Some capabilities stay hidden. The files will be fully released eventually. Maybe. Probably. The timeline is indefinite. His story teaches uncomfortable truths about intelligence work. Success requires deception. Effectiveness requires betrayal. Security requires sacrifice. The work is necessary. The work is dirty. Both statements are true. Moral complexity doesn't resolve into simple lessons. The modern assessment is balanced. He was very good, not perfect, very brave, not invincible, very effective, not irreplaceable. The nuanced view honors his real contributions without inflating them beyond recognition. The honest evaluation serves everyone better. The Syrians who executed him are mostly dead now. Age, disease, politics. The government changed. Assad took power, held it for decades. His son rules now. Eli Cohen's hanging is distant history, barely remembered. The geopolitical landscape transformed. The execution is a footnote. History moves on. But in Israel, the memory persists. Every intelligence officer knows the name. Every military commander studies the case. Every citizen knows the basic story. National hero, brave spy, ultimate sacrifice. The mythology serves a purpose. Nations need heroes. Stories need meaning. Sacrifices need validation. The final truth is simple. Eli Cohen was a man who made a choice: serve his country, risk his life, accept the consequences. He executed the mission brilliantly. He got caught eventually. He died bravely. The arc is complete. The story has meaning. The sacrifice mattered. His children wished they'd known him better. His wife wished they'd had more time. His friends wished he'd been extracted earlier. His commanders wished he'd been more careful. His enemies respected his skill. His country remembers his service. All of these things are true simultaneously. The hanging in Marjah Square happened 60 years ago. The gallows are gone. The square is renovated. Damascus moved on. Syria moved on. The world moved on. But the story endures. Some sacrifices transcend their moment. Some missions outlive their agents. Some legends contain truth. Eli Cohen died at dawn on May 18, 1965. Israeli spy, Syrian nightmare, human being, father, husband, patriot, traitor, hero, criminal. All the labels fit. All the labels fail. He was a man who chose a mission, executed it brilliantly, paid the ultimate price. The rest is history. The history is complicated. The complications are honest. The honesty is the only way to truly honor what he did and who he was. His final words were, Shema Yisrael, hear, O Israel, the ancient prayer, the declaration of faith, the statement of identity. In that moment, surrounded by enemies, facing death, he claimed his truth. Not Kamal Amin Thaabet, not the cover story, not the legend. Eli Cohen, Israeli, Jew, believer. The mask fell away. The real man appeared, then died, but died as himself. That final authenticity matters. Maybe it's the only thing that ultimately does.